pillow. Chances are you clicked on this video because you're interested in something on psychosomatic phenomena or psychosomatic events. Maybe you're looking for a technique that can help you with that. Or you just want information. What is it? What is psychosomatic? Okay. The word means mind, body, sensation. It means something in the mind is being transferred back to the body, okay, and is being manifested, and I'll talk about this. The definition of psychosomatic. Well, we can look it up. If I'm going to have trouble with it, we can look it up. I have my book with me. Psychosomatic, a disorder. Psychosomatic is a disorder. They have a psychosomatic disorder. Okay? There's psychosomatic phenomena, and then there's this psychosomatic. Okay? A disorder in which the physical symptoms are caused or exacerbated by psychological factors, such as migraine headache, lower back pain, or irritable bowel syndrome. A further definition includes from an emotional disturbance. Okay? Psychosomatic phenomena is usually physical manifestation stemming from an emotional disturbance in the mind, from the mind to the body, in essence. There are many different types of manifestations, but the mechanism is the same, the subconscious manifesting emotions as a physical symptom, usually without conscious knowledge. Okay, well, this goes way back. This isn't something new. I studied this back in the 70s, okay, but it wasn't even new then. It goes back a long ways. So, back in 1893, there was a guy named Dr. Joseph Breuer. He was Sigmund Freud's mentor, helped him get into university and stuff. And so they worked together for about 10 years. So here's from an article, okay, about Dr. Breuer and this psychosomatic stuff. Okay, in 1893, Breuer had presented a paper called "Studies in Hysteria." In essence, Breuer stated that forgotten traumas, painful incidents that had left a psychological scar, were responsible for what was at the time called hysteria. It was, Breuer wrote, the undischarged emotional energy associated with these forgotten traumas that were the root cause of hysteria. Using hypnotic techniques, Breuer helped some patients to reenact and thus recall the original traumatic incident and integrate it into long-term memory. In doing so, the emotional charge, which is something I talk about, was released. This emotionally intense transfer of a memory from the unconscious to the conscious is known as catharsis, or abreaction, an effective method which seems to corroborate Freud's theories on the unconscious mind. Okay? Actually, they wrote the book together. Well, so at the core of a psychosomatic event is an emotional disturbance, this thing called emotional charge. And when we dissipate this emotional energy, that effect, the manifestation here, can be resolved, go down, and disappear. Okay? It just disappears. Okay? Now, there are all sorts of manifestations with this, and I give several examples in the book. One is my friend Dorothy. She had a spot on her gum line, okay, inside the mouth on the gum line, okay, and to a dentist, it was painful, so she went to the dentist, and the dentist said, well, I've seen this thing before, but it looks like a puncture wound, but there's no puncture. So I don't know what to do. He didn't know what to do. Well, she came to me and I said, it sounds like it might be something psychosomatic. I'd taken a look at it, and there was this pink round thing about the size of your little fingernail on her gum line. It's a little pinker than the normal gum. I wonder if it couldn't be psychosomatic. Maybe we should take a look at that, okay? So we did, and we sat in my study and we did this other technique that I learned back in the 70s for this, okay? Got her back into I don't use hypnosis. This did not use hypnosis of any kind whatsoever, or suggestion or whatever. It's simply memory recall. So there's this episode, and then there's a previous episode, and a previous episode, and a previous episode of previous episodes of things that have happened to her jaw. Okay, so there was this incident, this accident, this surgery, this thing. None of them really matched, okay, what this was until we hit on something in early childhood where another child had hit something with like a baseball bat, but this thing was a sharp object and it hit her right here. Okay? It stuck right here. See? A wound, a puncture wound. Okay? It wasn't punctured any longer. See? Psychosomatic. A physical manifestation from something in the mind, the subconscious mind. This is something unknown, an unknown cause. Okay. Well, we did the technique and did this other technique. Okay, but we ran through it. Who, what, when, where, why, and how. Who, what, when, where, why, and how. Running over the incident again and again and again and again. Bam! She says it's gone. It's gone. Where did it leave from? Well, it's kind of like what Dr. Brewer found. A forgotten trauma that when contacted moves out of the subconscious memory, okay, the subconscious mind, and into the conscious memory, long-term memory, catharsis. Okay? So we ended off. Brought her back to the present moment and ended off. That is kind of like what a session is like for this type of talking therapy. Okay, it took about 40 minutes, maybe an hour to get at. Okay, so I don't see her for a week. Okay, and I ask her, I see her, and I ask her, hey, how's the jaw? She said, oh, fine, it went away. Oh, good, what happened? Well, overnight, it went down by half. And the second night, it went down half again, and the third night, half again, and the fourth day is just a little speck. The fifth day, it was gone. We didn't do anything else. We didn't put any salve on it. We didn't put any myrrh golden seal on it or do anything to heal it physically. It went away on its own after that emotional upset is discharged. It goes away. The manifestation stops and the physical manifestation goes away. It was a psychosomatic event. Okay? One type. In other words, it's really a type of physical flashback. Okay? I talk about flashbacks in my book. This is Happiness is No Charge To. Target Your Emotions. Okay? And the person on the front doesn't feel real. Okay? He's a kind of a cartoon just a cutout, of a person, and he doesn't feel real, but it's the real world, and it's a real nice day, and he can't enjoy it, right? Because he's got all of these emotions in his brain suppressing his happiness. Okay, well, another friend had the flu, and I stayed away from the door, okay? And but on my way back home, I started remembering and feeling symptoms of the flu, okay? You get that kind of, throaty reaction. That's a psychosomatic thing, okay? Like I'm going to throw up or something, okay? Because in being reminded, the subconscious is being reminded by this association with the flu, okay, and the symptoms of the flu and vomiting, okay? And so I do my technique walking home for about maybe 5 to 10 minutes, okay? It goes away, it stops, and I'm fine. Okay, it was a psychosomatic recall, okay? It can actually bring on illness, and it can actually be used as an excuse by the subconscious mind. This is a real interesting phenomenon, okay? Got a lot. A friend had a successful medical transcription business with her husband. It could be really hectic. Sometimes she needed a rest, but did not just take a rest. Periodically, she would get ill and need to stay in bed a few days. It made it acceptable to family and friends that she needed a rest. The subconscious seems to have obliged her. Okay? The subconscious isn't necessarily a villain. It's trying to help you. It's a part of you that has really been trying to help you, and it brings up all of this crud. But you keep denying it, we keep denying it, and denying it, and denying it, and we keep having these symptoms. Okay? Because it's trying to get our attention with this, but we keep ignoring it. Okay? When I had my panic attack, I had to ask the subconscious what it was about, and then it gave me an image of the previous time that I had this panic attack. And that I was, even though I was going to a completely different town to see a different person, it still was reminded of the previous time and started making me nervous. Okay? Well, that's the problem of the subconscious. The subconscious has a little problem. It only deals with similarities. Okay? It associates similarities and reminders and triggers that. Okay? Sets that off. Okay? But it doesn't think in differences. It does not differentiate. Okay? It does not differentiate the difference in this moment from that moment. It's just reminded of this thing that happened 20, 30, 40 years ago, like it's happening now. A flashback. Okay? So flashbacks are a psychosomatic event. It's not that it's all just in your head. It's that there was an actual episode in the past. Okay? In the past. I'm trying to point. Okay? But the subconscious is reminded and makes you think that this is in the present. Okay? Because the subconscious doesn't say, tap, 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 hey, Steve, do you remember this? It doesn't do that. It just flashes this up. Okay? And you're just hit with it. I was hit with shock, absolute dread, and a feeling of impending doom with my panic attack. Okay? And 14 years later, I started having another episode. Okay? It was a flashback. It's psychosomatic. It isn't that it's all in your head and just unreal. It isn't that it's unreal. It's that it is based on something that is real that happened in the past. Okay? Forgotten trauma. Brewer, 1893. 1880s. All of the stuff in that book, Studies in Hysteria's paper, happened in the 1880s. Okay, they ran into a lot of people who had fright, which is shock, which caused them hysteria. And the subconscious and the mind just kept focused on it. It became a fixation and an obsession and a compulsion, and they had physiological symptoms. Okay? So that's where they get the term psychosomatic illness. I've stopped using that term, basically. I had a realization that these are psychosomatic events, and this is a part of psychosomatic phenomena, but it is not the only phenomena. That song in your head is a benign flashback, and it's normal. We all do it because we all have mirror neurons that can mimic what we experience. And it isn't that it's harmless, but it can be annoying, okay? But that is a type of psychosomatic phenomenon. A psychosomatic recall by the subconscious. And I have this, okay? I had it last night. Theme from, the whistling theme from A Fistful of Dollars. Or A Few Dollars More. I think it was For a Few Dollars More, you know, with Clint Eastwood. Okay? So, it associates and doesn't differentiate, and it doesn't, it focuses on similar past patterns and not differences in the moment. It is emotionally fixated in the past, reminded of undesired circumstances, wanting to avoid past upsets. It seems now to be overprotective of us. It does not consider that the present moment is different. This is why it is set off and cannot stop. It's just kind of automatic and nagging. Okay? It is limited in its focus and scope. This has just been a revelation. This was back on March 4th of 2019. Okay? This seems to be anxiety-based. Psychosomatic phenomena seems to be trauma-based, but also the anxiety of the trauma in the mind. A pattern of bad experiences has made it anxious about more of the same. Anxiety is about worry and fear that's going to happen again. That might happen again. I don't want that. How am I going to, and people start dwelling on it and fixating on it, and et cetera, et cetera. And this seems to have been a problem for the subconscious. So it's fixated and on the lookout for similarities. Okay? It's OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. It's a fixation caused by this emotional upset at the core of psychosomatic events is an emotional disturbance from a forgotten trauma, but it doesn't have to be a forgotten trauma, okay? People know the horrors of war that they went through. It's not forgotten. When I broke my wrist, I knew all about it, okay? But I didn't know about my first panic attack out on the road. I was driving at the time. Okay, when I had this panic attack and just had this shock run down through me like I've been hit by lightning, and this feeling of absolute dread and impending doom, and that's all it was. It's called an emotional flashback. There are three basic types of flashbacks: the benign flashback of a memory, the emotional flashback of just emotions. Just the emotions. You don't get a visual. And then there's the traumatic flashback where you're back there with a visual and all of the sounds and the stereotypical type of stuff you see in a movie. Okay, where the guy, the guy has a flashback moment of panic or whatever, and he's back in the war. Okay. That's a psychosomatic event, and it is emotionally based. It is based on horror. It was horrifying. Okay? And so those images stuck. But the thing to realize is this is about emotions. This is about emotional charge and emotional energy, and you can look those terms up. Or you can read my book. They're in my book. The thing to realize is it's not the image. What? It's not the image. The image is right in front of me. It's the horror of the image. And it's the emotional energy of the horror in the image. Of the image and behind the image. Behind the image is power, that image is powered by this emotional thing called emotional charge. Well, my technique gets at this. Many techniques get at this one way or another. My technique gets at this directly. What emotion is that? That is horror. Okay? See, that was easy. Step one of the technique is psychology supported, which is label it, name it, call it that. Fine, easy, okay? The second step is, address this energy. Address the emotional energy of the horror. It is not horror only. It is horror charge. Labeling that has made all of the difference to me with the technique. When I first discovered the technique, it was a fit of irritation. But my realization was it's not irritation. It's the interpretation of this energy pattern and wavelength that we call irritation. And this energy wave pattern is termed the charge. So this is not just horror. This is the energy of the horror. Okay? It's the horror charge. Step 3 of the technique is doing the technique. You do the technique. And in a while, that horror reduces. That sensation of horror, the physical sensation of horror reduces. And the mental sensation of the horror reduces. And the horror of that image reduces. And that image can fade and reduce. And with a little work, it can be gone. Okay? And not bother you so much. And if it does come back, you just do the technique on it some more. And it goes away. And that's what I did with my panic attack. It took about 3 trips over and back. It's about a half-hour drive to another town. And for 3 times, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, I did the technique. Well, the 4th time, I'm going through this spot in the road, and I go by it and through this little S curve where it happened. Well, I go through the first S curve, part of the S curve, and I go, oh, that was that spot. I didn't feel anything. This is the 4th time through. And the way back I didn't feel anything. And the 5th time I laughed at a cow, I laughed at a donkey, and I laughed my rear end off as I went through the S-curve. It didn't bother me anymore. It was gone. No more flashback, no more nervousness, no more fear, no more panic. Gone. Psychosomatic event stopped. Just like my friend's physical manifestation, my emotional manifestation of a psychosomatic event vanished. I use the term dissipated. Okay? This energy transfers out of you. It dissipates. Sometimes it's almost like fireworks. I had an anger fit. And I did the technique on the shock and the anger that I was in. And in a little bit, and it didn't take long, it fizzled out like a fireworks. It just went kind of, it fizzled out like a fireworks, and it was gone, over with, quit, vanished, whatever you want to call it, dissipated, Mr. Bond, okay? So that's what this technique can do for psychosomatic events. And so if you're interested, I'll leave a link below. I'll leave some links below to my blog and to my books and to my book, Happiness is No Charge To Target Your Emotions, because this is all emotional. It is the emotions that are really bothering us. And it doesn't matter what level or range we are talking about. This is the whole range of negativity, from the pressure on us, to the stress it causes, to the anxiety of it all, to the panic and just sheer numbness. I'm just numb, or the hysteria of it, the distraught and overwrought feelings about it, or depression, or even suicidal thoughts and ideation. Okay, I just did a tweet on suicide and how there is one thing in common with suicide, even though even though it might be something in a different range that's going on with it. There's a common denominator, and that is despondency. And I have had psychosomatic events of despondency triggering, suicidal thoughts and ideations, and I stopped those with the technique working on the despondency, the emotional charge. This is all emotional. It might be clinical depression with low dopamine levels, low serotonin levels. You may have a totally shot nervous system like I do. I have PTSD. But it's that emotion that's bothering me. And that's how I stop depression. That's how I stop guilt. That's how I stop worthlessness, hopelessness, helplessness, powerless, meaningless. That's how I stop apathy. That's how I stop despondency and despair and desperation, as I do this technique on those emotions. You get those to stop, and that emotional state stops, at least for that time. Okay, this particular episode, that can end. That can stop. That might not even come back. Many things have stopped. I don't have that flashback out on the road anymore. It doesn't trigger on its own. There's no association to trigger. There's no energy in the association to trigger. I can see it as an image in my mind of going through there and even panicking, but I'm not panicking because I'm not thrown back into the situation as if it is happening right now. The emotional energy as Dr. Brewer called it, has been released on this emotional disturbance, this psychological scar, okay, in this psychosomatic event. So, I hope that you have a better understanding now of psychosomatic phenomena and how you can get at it by getting at the emotions of the episodes and how that can actually stop. And you can stop having some physical manifestations and some emotional manifestations, and that will help reduce the overall stress in the body, and that's a good benefit. So I hope you found this interesting. I hope you found this of value. Okay, if you did, give me a like. Okay, give me a share. Okay, maybe subscribe to my channel or whatever. And leave a comment. Feel free to leave a comment. And so I'm Steve Barham. I'm an emotional researcher. I discovered this particular little technique. It's based on psychology. And I wrote it all up into my book, Happiness is No Charge To. Target your emotions, because it's emotional. And be well and happy, because happiness is no charge, the lack of negative emotions. Charge was a word back in the 70s that we used for negative emotions. Okay, it meant negativity or negative emotions. So happiness is the lack of negative emotions. Happiness is no charge. That's how I got the title of my work. Thank you very much. We'll see you next time. Take care.